This is the butcher shop, the occupation. The only real radicalism in our time will come as it always has, from people who insist on thinking for themselves and who reject party-mindedness. Christopher Hitchens. The only element which allows an occupied nation to rise up against its oppressors is radicalism. It is radicalism that we find embedded in the words of Thomas Paine, Ben Franklin, and Patrick Henry. We have had a second civil war in America, bloodless but no less brutal for that. The result is now Americans labor for the same masters that they did before our forefathers rose up in a fury of radicalism to fight a bloody war against empire. Can't you help but see it? We are once again a colonial venture. We are not citizens of a sovereign nation, but lackeys whose very lives are once again hostages to the fortunes of one tremendously wealthy man or another. The best example, the most recent example, is the truth which blares out at us in the twisted, linguistic, fecal barrage of so-called news. In this case, it was, sadly still is, the confirmation hearings on nominee Kavanaugh. This last war, the bloodless yet brutal war which reshaped the American continent from a nation of free people into a diaspora exiled within its own borders, was not a civil war. America has no winners in that war. The war of money versus free men. When Fred Wallace was forced out of the vice presidency in 1946, it was obvious. When Hillary Clinton took the nomination for her own months before the convention, before co-opting the Joint Funding Committee for the DNC, it was evident. And when Dianne Feinstein, along with the other hacks that made up the Democratic leadership, chose to make Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings about the Me Too circus instead of what was likely the outcome for the American people in the case of his nomination, 100 minus 52 equals 48, you lose. It was evident, and yet the Democratic leadership ran a flagpole through an ordinary citizen and waved her like a bloody flag right up until the moment the bus ran her over. For what? Did it block Kavanaugh? Did it unify the Democrats more solidly in preparation for the midterms? As a private operative, I can tell you definitely not. Did it raise money for the Democratic Party? A little, but mostly it just moved existing campaign money around. So why do it? Because of all the above, which were the intended purpose. And our party's leadership is too old and too out of step with the present, much less the future, to have realized it. But lest you be feeling triumphant as a Republican, think on this. Your party leadership is old and out of step too. Worse, at the level of the voter, none of us are aware of just how little this means. Because when Henry Wallace was yanked out of the presidency by the party bosses, when Al Gore was jobbed out of the presidency by an unconstitutional process committed by the guardians of the Constitution, and yes, when Hillary stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders, the same things were happening to the Republicans. Remember Mitt Romney, who was supplanted by John McCain and then had Sarah Palin hung around his neck like that dead albatross, which so closely resembles the American people today. Mathematics are merciless. Money wins. Neither party seems to realize that party-mindedness has replaced free thought in their own party. No private citizens, Republicans or Democrat, want their party leadership to be concerned with matters that appeal to only the most narrow slice of the lunatic fringe, like transgender bathrooms. Nor do they want the nation's resources squandered on wars of intervention that only profit corporate or banking concerns. The problem is that both parties are packed chock-a-block with rhinos and dinos. Does that not say it all? So there it is, the smoking gun. Feinstein's festival of fugue and McConnell's leadership of 50-odd rhinos. not in a furious charge of political fury, but the inevitable shuffle forward that accomplished the aim of crushing any resistance in the nation's highest court to the whims and the plans of the 50 or so people who are our bosses.